Welcome to Season 3 of Creatively Speaking. I'm your host, Leanna Weller-Smith, the founder of Weller-Smith Design. In this episode of Beyond the Binding, I'll be speaking with Althea Brown, the founder of MetMG and author of Caribbean Paleo. Althea and I first met when she was considering self-publishing for her first cookbook. While the timing wasn't right, she was still able to think about what she would include in her book if and when the time came. That proved to be the right move, as soon after our conversation, she was approached by a traditional publisher, putting her on the road to becoming an author. Our paths did eventually cross again when she was ready to uplevel her website to get ready for her book launch, and we have been following along ever since. It has been awesome to see her appearing on TV, in magazines, and participating in food events in and across the U.S., Guyana, and the Caribbean. Listen in as Althea shares her personal health revelations, triumphs over gluten sensitivity, and her commitment to preserving her Guyanese culinary heritage through food. From food blogging and navigating the demanding process of cookbook publishing to becoming a featured chef during Antigua and Barbuda's Restaurant Week, Althea's story is a captivating blend of tradition, wellness, and community building. This episode is a must-listen and includes tips on embracing your roots, tackling dietary changes, and creating a community through shared food experiences. Let's get started. Hey, Althea, welcome to the Creatively Speaking podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so excited to be here, and I can't wait for this discussion.
Me too. So before we get started, I just wanted to give the listeners a little backstory. Althea and I met a while ago in regards to cookbooks. However, I will say, even from the get-go, we did not have the pleasure of designing your cookbook, but I'm excited to talk about it and all the things that have come from it. But before we get started, I would love for you just to introduce yourself, let our listeners know a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. We did start off with me saying, I want to write a cookbook. How can you help me? I did write a cookbook, ended up going through the traditional publishing route, Caribbean Paleo, but had such a great experience just even going through those initial conversations that I just knew in my mind that we'd always work together. But I'm Althea Brown, in case I don't know that yet.
I love you.
I am now a cookbook author, a food blogger. My blog is called metimg.com. I share predominantly Guyanese and Caribbean recipes, but I also remix some of those recipes to make them gluten-free, dairy-free, grain-free, and paleo, as my cookbook suggests. I discovered a couple of years ago, probably about 5 years now, that I could no longer digest gluten, and gluten was making me really sick. And I didn't want to miss out on those delicious recipes from my childhood that had gluten, so I started to kind of tweak them and remix them. And I discovered that also when I eat paleo, I felt my best self. So I started to think about what paleo recipes could look like in the Caribbean, under the Caribbean umbrella. And then Caribbean Paleo was born. So happy to be here today and just talk about that journey and answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, I'm super excited. And just like you mentioned, we met in a different capacity, but we work with a lot of food bloggers. So we work with them in two different ways. Either it's a website or it is a cookbook. And what I always find interesting is a lot of them come into us only knowing us for one thing. And so it's always kind of curious, like if they come in for a cookbook, they may only know us for cookbooks. But if they're coming for digital, that may be just the one lens that they know of our work. And so when you and I met, you came in because you were interested in learning about self-publishing. And we had a mutual friend. She had gone through the process with us. And she also was, paleo. She went through the Whole30, and the two of you knew each other from there. So I was like so excited to chat with you even about the self-published product, because I could see the vision for how it would, kind of play out in the future. It seemed like something just like her topic was very timely, and that a lot of people were really doing Whole30 at the time. I think it was really popular, but what you're missing from Whole30 recipes in general is flavor, I would say, like in all the
cultural aspect.
Yeah, the cultural aspect. Exactly. So I was super excited to chat with you about those things. But, even just taking a little step back, just like you said about your blogging, that's really what started you on the path of even creating a cookbook. So would you just tell us even a little bit about just the origin story of your blogging experience so that people can get an idea of when you started and how that all kind of came about?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share. I get a lot of people who follow me on social media who are also bloggers are like, wow, your platform is so great. How are you doing? How did you get here? And I'm like, girl, this has been like me blogging with like a little iPad for years before I'm like, I should get serious about this. So in 2012, just a little bit after I had my first kiddo, I have 3 kiddos, and I was at home and newly married and new mom and trying to figure out all these cultural foods, because as someone who's an immigrant, it was important that my kids, who are now Americans, grew up knowing that like they do have this history, they do have this culture, that they are connected to this food. And I wanted to make these foods at home. Now, I had been cooking my whole life because as a Caribbean woman, you're raised that you're going to have to learn how to cook. You're going to have to take care of your family. That's just, my mom is very traditional. And so I've been cooking, but I haven't been cooking without my mom being right there. Like for me to be able to say, well, taste this and let me know and that sort of stuff. But suddenly now I'm like in Colorado, away from any Caribbean community. Yeah. But then back up. So I was living in New York before, got married, moved to Colorado. Suddenly I'm like in this world where I need
like culture shock.
Yeah. It's a culture shock. I don't know where to buy anything. I need to like make these things. I don't have like restaurants that I can run to if I wanted like a roti and curry. Like I need to make them at home. My husband is also Guyanese. And so he's like, I want this food that my mom made as well. Yeah. So total overwhelm. And I started calling my mom like daily on the phone. Mom, can you tell me, how do I make this? How do I add this and that? And like Caribbean and ethnic moms don't write anything down. And so she was like, you made it. You put a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I have a type A personality. You probably already know this, Liana. But I didn't want to, every time I make this something, it came out differently. And so I started to like just write it down. Like it has to be the same thing every time. Like it has to be exact. And I started sharing it within my like group chat and my friends group. And I was like, hey, I made this and it came out exactly like my mom's. You guys should try it. And they were super excited for it because their moms also didn't write anything down. And they said, you should put this in a place where people can get to it. And at that time, like Blogger was big. Remember, like everyone,
yeah, oh my gosh,
blogging their stories and like just really not so much like the structure of what a food blog is right now, but really just saying like, I've been experimenting in the kitchen and here's this one photo. And that's kind of how this whole blog started. At the time, it was called Honeymooning with Food. Because
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's called Honeymooning with Food, and I would like share here and there whenever I wanted to. Now it's 2012, and then I kind of like took a break because it was my hobby, and I just come back to it. And then I think somewhere along the line, it started getting a lot of views, a lot of tractions. I made like my first YouTube video using my iPad and pure sound, no voiceover, no music. Just me cooking and like worth the setting. And I always say like I was tasty videos before there was tasty.
Oh, that's great.
And so then that started getting popular. And then I said, you know what, I should really make this something that's related to my culture. And like, I'm not going to be honeymooning with food forever. And someone joked that I should name it MetMG, one of my friends, because that's my favorite dish that my grandmother used to make. And I was like, I can't make it that. No one will know what it is. And then we're like, we'll make it that, like just as a joke, made it that. And then it kind of stuck. And I was like, actually, this is really cool because when Guyanese people see that word, they immediately identify with it and feel like this is something I know. Metemji is a root vegetable stew or soup, depending on how you categorize those. And it's very popular in Guyana. So the minute any Guyanese person see that word, they're like, oh, this is a Guyanese thing. And I got a lot of validation that way. And the blog grew. And now here we are.
It sounds like you obviously started with the traditional recipes. And then how did it kind of move over then into more Paleo, Whole30?
So again, I was blogging kind of whenever I wanted to, not really thinking about structure and SEO and that kind of stuff, but had this place, and it was fairly well known in like Guyana and people, because they would come for these traditional recipes. And the thing that they liked was that I actually would say, this is the best version of this thing, or this is the thing that I remember from my childhood, and people loved it. Well, in 2016, I had gone back to work. I had a second baby, gone back to work, and I was like, okay, I think I need to be working. And I started having massive acid reflux, and everyone thought I had an ulcer because I had like gone back to work. My life was like super chaotic and stressful, and I was trying to manage that. And I would get like ill every time I had a meal, especially if I had a meal at work. Oh my God, I'd be like keeled over in the bathroom for hours. And I finally decided to go to a GI doctor, and they did all their probes and stuff. And they're like, you don't have an ulcer, but maybe you want to like have a food diary and see what that looks like. And then they were like, in the meantime, you could like be on all these pills and you'll be fine. Well, I was lazy, so I just went on the pills. I'm like, I'm going to do a food diary, just give me the pills, right? And so I was doing just fine. Like I taking these pills, doing just fine. And then I changed jobs because I was like, my job's so stressful. I don't want to keep working there. I'm going to go back to what I know. And I used to work in advertising in New York. And so I like went back to that, right? And I was like going one day, I had a meeting and I realized I'd forgotten to take the pills that the doctor was like, you should take these pills. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be so sick. So I said to my neighbor, like my office mate, I have to run to Walgreens because I need to get this thing. And she was like, well, what is it? And I started telling her, like, I'll tell you more. That person is now a holistic medicine practitioner. And she was like, when I came back, she was like, I know you have to take this because you look like you're in crisis, but when you're done and your meeting's done, let's talk about what you're eating. And I was like, hell, whatever. Took it. Yeah. My meeting. Then had that conversation. She was like, have you ever tried paleo? Have you ever tried eliminating things from your diet? You should really look into it and really try and see if it's the food that you're eating that's making you sick. I ended up trying the Whole30. I like went online, looked it up, and I ended up trying the Whole30, and I felt amazing, like so amazing that after those 30 days, I stopped taking those pills. Wow. I was just like, I don't need any of this. I'm going to just kind of like watch how I eat and see what happens. If you know anything about Whole30, most people who do their first Whole30, right after they jump right back into eating the way they ate. I did exactly that. Right after the 30 days. Like I ate it. And then, yeah. Burger. Yeah. I then like ate and drank and then was sick all over again, and then said, you know what, I got to do this right. And I think it really is what I'm eating that's making me sick. I ended up realizing that when I reintroduced things like gluten and dairy and refined sugar, that I felt like crap. But when I stayed away from them, I felt really good. Went back to my doctor, said, hey, can you give me all the tests to see if I have celiac? Because I notice I get violently ill when I take gluten. We did all the things. He said, no, you don't have celiac, but it looks like you do have a gluten sensitivity if you're saying that's how you feel when you eat gluten. So from there, I started eliminating gluten from my diet. But like most people who like, I'm not really celiac, I'm sensitive to gluten, I still would eat gluten here and there. And I'd feel relatively fine. But if I like overdid it, I would be really sick. And then I started to think about, you know, how inflammation works in your body. And really, I should just be gluten-free. And so I made that push in about 2019. It's like 3 whole years later. Yeah. And it's like, I really have to stop messing with this. And I made that shift. And then I started sharing on my platform. So the whole time, I was still sharing like regular food. No one knew that I like ate this way. Then in 2019, I said, actually, my husband said, if you're doing this blog thing, you should be true to who you are. Like, you don't even eat this food. Yeah. And I'm like, you're right. I'm like, you guys eat it all the time, but I don't. And so I was like, I'll share a gluten-free thing. And I think the first gluten-free thing I shared was bake, which is a fried bread that we make in Guyana. And I made a gluten-free version and I shared it. And so many people, I'm just like you. Like, I can't eat this. I'm so happy that you shared this. Can you share more? And I was like, oh my God, there's like all these people who want this. And I started talking about the Whole30 and people were super curious. And that got the attention of the people at Whole30 because I started talking about the Caribbean Whole30 and what it would look like to eat Whole30 as a Caribbean person. And I did a whole like 30.
Yeah, they have a lot, like a diversity and inclusion, I think, section, right? Where they're really trying to bring in different ethnic chefs. I think it's great that they're doing that as well.
A lot of things were happening right at that 2019, right? Like it was just before the pandemic.
Yeah.
They had the big Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And so everyone was trying to amplify Black voices. And it was right at the time where I just started to like be serious about my blog and show up consistently and really experiment with stuff and talk. So it was like everything kind of happened at the right time because again, now everybody's in the pandemic. We're all cooking from home. We all want these recipes. Restaurants are shut down. So both arms of my blog were like just taking off at the same time. Like all these people were like, I need to know how to make all this stuff I got from the Guyanese bakery. And then these people over here who are like, this is fascinating. I'm in the same boat with you. Can you teach us more? So it was really, really overwhelming and exciting to just kind of like have both of those things go like, you know,
at the same time.
Yeah.
That is exciting, though. And it's great, too, that they had the opportunity to amplify other people's platforms through their own platform. And to also then give all these other people the opportunity to experience different cuisine, different flavor palettes, and just to understand that there's other options, too. And you can be creative with the food choices that you may have to be making. So I think that was great that they did that.
And I think there's the stigma that like ethnic food is not healthy. But at the foundation of most of those cultural recipes, they start with basic core ingredients and whole ingredients, and mostly in the Caribbean, like root vegetables. Those are things that are so nutritious and good for you and not highly processed. And so like it made absolute sense for me when I looked at it. I was like, oh, I can make this. The only thing I can't have is rice, which is like a daily staple, but I'll figure that out. And so it was actually really a perfect thing that happened. And I started talking more about Whole30 and I became a Whole30 coach. And that's when I reached out to you because I was like,
I was going to say, I think that's about when we first met.
Yeah, it was right around then. And then I became friends with Shivanji and we were talking about all of these things that we wanted to do within our own space. And she was like, I'm working with this great team on my book. And I was like, oh, let me check it out and see. But I think I also was not quite ready because it was like so many things happening all at once. And I was saying yes to everything. Like, you know, and you get that like, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do this. And I had to kind of dial it back and say like, well, do I really want to do a book right now? What would that look like? And am I ready? And I wasn't ready. And so I kind of like took a step back and tried to focus on building up my following, my community, and being seen as a resource for these recipes and an expert in this kind of area versus just someone who was playing in their kitchen and came up with a recipe, you know?
Yeah. And that kind of brings us to why we're here today, talking about this cookbook, because like you said, we talked about it a while ago, and that was the self-publishing route. And I think also too, like it just even having the conversation then opens you up for different opportunities to kind of happen. Like when you buy a car, you think, oh, I'm the only person that's going to get this car. But then as soon as you buy it, like everyone else has the car. But it's like kind of like that thing that happens. Like now everyone wants me to write a book. And I'm so I'm curious, like, I know we started talking about it, but in the back of your mind, did you want to write a cookbook, or was that a goal, a desire, even prior to when we spoke? Or was it more or less seeing other colleagues kind of go through that process initially?
Yeah, I think initially it was kind of, I didn't think that I was like worthy of writing a book. You know, like I have a blog, I'm blogging, I'm happy to do this part. I felt like a cookbook was a big mountain to climb. And I was like, I don't think so. But people kept asking. And I think I am a people pleaser. That is something I know. And so people kept saying like, hey, why don't you write a cookbook, put the recipes in a book and sell it? People kept saying do an ebook. Like they were like, oh, yeah, do an ebook. It's so easy. You can sell it and you can make all this money. And I was like, I'm never in it for the money. But if I do something, I want to do it well. And I am not knocking ebooks, because I did end up doing like a free ebook download of my favorite recipes from the blog. But just thinking about this book and what would I want it to be like, and what kind of stories would I tell, and what recipes would go in there. And I started collecting like a bunch of recipes, saving recipes. Like when I think about, okay, this month I'm going to do this content, ooh, well, that's a good recipe. I could save that for the book, right? And it was like I had this binder with like all these notes and all these recipes and tabs and things that I would do. And eventually when I came to like sit down and start thinking about this book, again, my husband, who is like,
good man.
The book should represent you and not be a reaction to what people are asking you for.
Yeah.
Like, you should be proud of it and like it should feel like you. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like it has to be how I'm eating now. Because one of my greatest frustration is I go to places. I'll get invited to dinner. I'll go to like events and there's nothing that I can eat. And I'm like, I don't eat this.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, you're right. It has to feel like me. And it has to feel like if I picked anything in this book, I can eat it and not get sick. And so that's kind of how we ended up in this space. But yeah, no, initially, I didn't.
Did you reach out to any publishers, or did they find you? Like, how did it even kind of end up coming about then?
Yeah. So after we talked about self-publishing, I went on this journey of like figuring out what do I really want to do. So I ended up talking to someone who also does hybrid publishing, where they are a publisher, but you still are self-publishing. Right. So it's kind of a hybrid. Yeah. And then I ended up talking to friends who had gone the traditional publishing route and asking about deals and like, how did your first one go and all this sort of stuff. And right when I was kind of taking a break, when I'd said, okay, I talked to enough people, I had to do this, Page Street reached out to me. And actually, I had reached out to Page Street and said, I have this idea for a cookbook. I'd love to pitch to you guys. Can you tell me what the process is? And they had said, we have a long wait list and we're not really taking on new writers right now, but we'll get back to you. And I was like, okay, well, that was the last thing. I'm like, okay, I feel like I did my due diligence. I feel like now it's not the time for me. I'll just keep blogging and keep like saving those recipes. And they reached out to me and they were like, hey, Althea, we have an idea for a cookbook that we would like you to write. Well, it's the same cookbook.
Well, that's great to hear.
Yeah. And so, and they were like, hey, we think that you could write this like paleo book about Caribbean food because we've seen your platform, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's funny. That's the same book I was going to pitch to you, but great.
Yeah. So, because not all traditional publishing stories are that perfect, like sometimes they try to fit you into a box and so that's great. Yeah. They saw the vision. They could see. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was for me, I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. This was meant to be. Like, I must be meant to be doing this right now. And so had to kind of shift gears and say, okay, well, it looks like I'm going to be writing this book. They had a certain window in which they wanted everything to be done. Everything's like, hurry up and get it done. Some of it, I was like, I can't. I have to test some of these recipes and get it back to you. And, I'll write the manuscript and test and work along with you and see where we net out. It took about 18 months to do all of that, which is still really fast because it'll take people like 3 years to write a book.
I was going to say, sometimes it takes like, especially the traditional route. And I think some of these publishers are now starting to try to get through them a little faster. I think they're really trying because they know that self-publishing or hybrids are able to be a little more flexible with timing.
Yeah. And it ended up being, the timing, it was crazy. And you don't realize how much work goes into actually writing a book.
Yeah.
Even when you're like, have the support of a traditional publisher and you get the editor and the copy editor and all these other things, that it's still like a mountain of work to like write, test, write again, edit, make sure that it's perfect because once it's printed, it's not like your blog where you can be like, whoops. Let me go back and do that. And now it's a learning experience for me as well. I was like, well, yeah, I did this. I made it once. I think it works. But I mean, along the way, I could probably like tweak it. And then they're like, no, all final edits go in by this date. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. Even on the self-publishing side, you're dealing with all new content, right? Like this is all brand new. So you have to go through these extra little tests and things of it and making sure that it's right. But, we're working with some self-published titles that they're repurposing. These recipes have been on their websites for quite some time. They've had time to test it, tweak it, all the things. They know it's a perfect recipe. But even still, when it comes to that, okay, this is the final edit, they're like, let me test it just one more time. It happens.
The other part for me too, which was like a big aha, was in a blog post, you have all this stuff that goes before it, like can explore and say, try this, try that, blah, blah, blah. And then you have the recipe, so you feel like you've given enough. Whereas in a cookbook, you have the recipe head note and recipe, right?
Yeah.
And so what if someone who's never had Guyanese food ever before in their life pick up this book? They have to understand like what these ingredients are and where it's coming from and like, why do this step to step? So even my writing changed because of edits and directions that I got from my editor that I've now implemented into my blog.
I was going to say that I think even some of our clients they say the same thing, which is it's very insightful what they learn through the editorial process for their blog, because yes, there's SEO and all the things on the technical side, but then it's also just there's technical things on the recipe side itself that a lot of bloggers just aren't really aware of.
Yeah, I remember one of the things that stuck with me was how you measure ingredients. And she was like, is it half a cup of chopped onions? Is it an onion chopped?
Yeah.
Like half an onion chopped. Like, you know, like how are you doing it? Because I need to know exactly what it is. And I was like, I never even thought of that. Like, because everybody's going to read it and interpret it different. Now, onions, that doesn't matter.
And then it's consistency across.
Yeah, but then...
Yeah.
But then with like an ingredient that you're measuring, if you're measuring it like coconut oil, if you're measuring it like in a solid state or a liquid state, it might end up being more or less, right?
Yeah.
And so those things like have now stuck with me. And I start like when I'm writing for my blog, I think about those things. So even those things where like I have been writing for my blog for 10 years and still like when I was like, I got this.
No, I don't. Let me rethink that. But it is great. Yeah, it just adds then to the professionalism that then happens, like comes through the blog even after the book. So it all feeds into the same end goal. So then, okay, we have our book. We have it. It's going to the printer. I'm curious, this season of Creatively Speaking, it's called Beyond the Binding. So this is where I want to get into some of the juicy things because the book, obviously, 18 months, you know, you're writing, editing, shooting, all the photos, all the things, like all this stuff, blood, sweat, and tears. But then once it goes to the printer, that's not the end. That's kind of like the next beginning. So I'm curious how you approached the actual book launch or like the lead up to when the books were actually going to be available.
Yeah. So, you know, I submit everything. I get all the photos done. I get a book launch date. And now I'm no longer working with my editor and a copy editor. I'm now working with a publicist and a PR manager who are like, here's a schedule. Here's what it's going to look like. And they have their own things that they're going to be doing, which include like, we want to send this book out to as many people as we can. Tell us all the people that you think should get this book. Well, and then I make a list and I reach out to people and can I have your address? Can you send me this? And some people are people I don't know personally. It's just people that I follow their blog and I like what they're doing. And so reaching out to them and saying like, can I send you a copy of the book? No obligation to share. Like, I just want to get it out there. And some really exciting people said yes. And so I was like, wow, this is great, you know? And then so we have that. In the meantime, I am thinking about when this book comes out and people start to like go to my site and people start to interact with the book, what experience are they going to have? They're going to have this beautiful, beautiful book with all these beautiful photos. And then they're going to come to my site that was like an afterthought that is running like some generic template and has colors that at some point I'd felt like represent me, but now I don't really feel like it does. And hasn't really been thought out. It's like halfway there, halfway not there. And then also there's like tons and tons of traditional recipes, and in between they're like these gluten-free paleo ones, and you can't really separate them and figure it out. And oh my God, this is going to drive me nuts, you know? And I want a place where I can direct people for the book that's not just go to Amazon, go to Barnes and Nobles. Like, here's where you're going to get some insight about the book, because I feel like this is how I'm going to drive all this traffic, right? So then my brain's like, what are all the things that I need to do while they're doing what they're doing? What do I need to do? I need to revamp my website. I need to be serious. I need to let people know that I am a serious blogger. I do have a presence, and I am an expert in this field that I am selling this book about. And what does that look like? And I go online, I start looking at blogs that I really love, right? So I'm like, Sassy Spoon, love that blog. I'm on there. And I scroll down to the end of that blog, and it says that it was designed by Weller Smith Design. And I have this I didn't know they do blogs.
It's like full circle. Yeah.
And so then I reach out to you and I say, I didn't even know you guys did blogs. I kept saying I know you do cookbooks and I know you design the covers and the whole book and everything, but I didn't know you do blogs. And then you're like, we have this whole other hour and here's some beautiful blogs we've done. And I was like, yes, yes, yes to all of those things.
When you showed up in my inbox, I was like, Althea, I can't wait to chat with her. I really thought it was going to be Cookbook again, and then you were like, no, I'm ready. I didn't know you did websites. And that was an awesome project to work on with you because it was, we had a lot of fun and I think it turned out just beautifully. And even that, I think your husband also was very vocal with you need to go with what this is, what is for you. This is.
Yeah. I know he totally was because there was a moment where I was like, I don't know, Leanna, you're showing me this and I love it. But I don't know if it's Caribbean enough. And I think that was some leftover from when I was doing the book. And I was constantly being told that what I wanted wasn't Caribbean enough. It didn't have that aesthetic that they thought was going to be Caribbean, which is big, bold colors, right? Which I'm for big, bold colors. But I think in my home design and I'm more grays and, greens and rattan and those kinds of things. That's my Caribbean feel. And I am forever grateful that you were like, I will do it and I will show you and we will be right back here. And you did, and you changed it to all those bold colors. And I was like, I hate it. I want it to be the first version of it. And my husband was like, I told you to just go with the one that they designed for you. You went through this whole process of telling them who you are. To then turn that off at the end makes no sense. And so, and every day, I go on my blog and I feel so happy with it. And I get so many compliments, from Guyanese people who will message me and say, they're so happy to find a blog that looks so professional and so nice and neat and everything's organized and everything's well written. And I feel like there's some pride in that, right? But it's not something that just is put together or thrown together. It's really thoughtful and it really, the user experience is amazing. Yeah, so that was the first thing that I was like, I got to work on this. The second thing that I thought was I want to do a cookbook tour. And my publisher said no. They said, we no longer sponsor tours. If you want to do one, it's on you. And so then it was a whole figuring that out. And then the next part of that was that I was like, I need my own publicist, which you also connected me with Andrea, and she's amazing. She had worked with a lot of self-publishers and traditional publishers. And the one learning experience for both of us was I was hiring her a little late in the game. Mm-hmm. And so she really had just a small window. I think it was 1 month before the book was going to come out. Yeah. To try and get me all of these things connected and events and that sort of stuff out there. And that's my only regret is that I should have thought of that as something I needed to do sooner to get the ball rolling and get on the right schedules in time for the launch. But, hindsight is 2020 and you're constantly learning.
But I've learned from Andrea that it's never too late to do round two, there's always opportunities, even if it feels like you're a little quote unquote late, there's still time to in the future. Yeah. Yeah.
And for the first, for the launch, I knew that I wanted to launch my book in Guyana, where I'm from. And that's one of the things that my publishers did not agree with, right? They were like, do you really have a market in Guyana? What does that look like? How are you selling books? And for me, it was more about, I just want to celebrate this book. I don't even care if I have to give it away for free. I will go home and I will do it. And I didn't have to give it away free. Completely sold out 300 books at my event.
Wow.
full force. Everyone showed up, and it was fantastic.
It was awesome to watch. I was watching. Yeah.
Well, even the books on display sold. So it was just like, it was fantastic, right? And so I ended up just doing 3 big launches like that in markets where I knew people who followed me from like day one were in those markets. So we did Guyana, New York, and Toronto, and all 3 of them had the same sort of turnout. Because I'm planning everything myself, I was also like trying to do other markets. But we were then going into the Christmas season. That's the busiest time for bloggers. And I was like, I have to take a pause. And like you said, come back with a round 2. And by the time we started this new year and got into, say, February, when you're past all of that holiday content, was when I started getting out there again. And Andrea connected me with Bon Appetit Management, who does all of these corporate cafes. And they have a book club that they do. And she was like, I'm going to connect you with these people. And then we can do a second round of your book tour, more on the corporate side and getting it out there. And that was also well received. I think I did 15 stops.
You were busy. You did a lot of traveling for these. Was that all then self-funded then, or?
That was all self-funded. I did end up pitching to brands and asking for funding for all of the stops. Initially, I'd gotten some funding, and then they kind of like took that back. But because I was in a space where I felt like I had some money from my blog that I could invest in getting this book out. Not everyone's as fortunate. And so I was like, if it's just going to cost me a plane ticket and a hotel room, then I can do it, you know? And so I was able to do that. So all of the big launches were self-funded, but I charged an entry price for those because there would be a tasting and a book. And really the tasting and the book, the cost was just to offset the cost of like renting a space and buying the food, right? And so I made $0, but I was happy just getting the book out there and then just connecting with this large community that has supported me. And I think that also drives some FOMO for other people who were like, oh my God, when's the next one? You know, I want to come. And also help our book sales, because then I would say like, I'm not doing any more. So either get the next one or buy the book. And yeah, the book was a bestseller on Amazon. It was the #1 in Paleo for a couple of months.
Wow.
And then it was the #1 in Caribbean food for I think like 6 months. So it was just, it felt fantastic.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Congratulations. That's so amazing. And I feel like I expected this because I feel like I actually, like, even just working, all we did was the cookbook page like on the website. But even that, like, I love cookbooks and books so much that it's like when my clients in any capacity are creating something like that, it's like, this is going to be the best. Because all I know our clients, like in like you saying in your type A, but the thing is that the common thread here is how much you care. Like it's the passion. Like you want this to be each product, each touch point, each interaction. You want it to be the best, and it's not for you. It's for the person that's showing up on the other side of the table. And I think that is a testament to who you are and the people that you really do attract and are affecting by these things that you've created. They are receiving so much of you. It's a piece of joy, really, that they get to interact with you in these events, through your book, through your blog, and just getting to be in your presence, I think. Because I can see on the outside, looking through social media, just watching, and I just see all these smiles, and everyone is so happy, and you can tell they feel so fed and well, and just enjoying everything that you are feeding into them, like you're pouring into them, actually. So I think it should be a bestseller forever.
I hope so. And for me, I don't know why I was so surprised, but I was nervous. Like even when I was going to Guyana, and I ended up doing tons of press in Guyana for the book. I even like got to meet the president of Guyana and get him up and go. I was surprised at how people.
But how did that happen? Like, how did that happen?
So I have a friend who works in PR in Guyana, and she was like, I'll connect and connect the dots in the back end. But as you know, in PR, like you can pitch, but it's not necessarily going to convert to anything. And so she was like, yeah, I'm going to kind of pitch you to these outlets and see where that goes. And I think initially people were kind of like, what is this again? What is this about? And then I think I did like the first interview, and then everyone was like, hey, we want to have you on our show. And like people were just sharing it and so excited, and it had a lot of social media buzz. And I didn't realize how many people actually follow me, and that I'm not just follow me, but like use my recipes daily, and I'm a part of their home. Mm-hmm. And so I started getting that outpouring of support. And I remember one interview I did. I'd gone to this restaurant to get food one day in Guyana. I was already there, prepping for the launch. And I always go to this restaurant when I go to Guyana. Always go. And the owner was like, hey, Althea, let me connect you to this radio host, and maybe you can go on her show. And she was like, yeah, what are you doing? And we started talking about it. She's like, yeah, come to my show. Let me connect you to this other person. And it was just kind of like people connecting me and getting all of that out. It felt really, really, really great. But even still, I was doing all of that, and I was still like, are people going to come to the launch? Because people had bought, like a handful of people had bought tickets, but we're also selling tickets at the door. And so I was like, maybe I need to like tell them I need less food. And because it was a tasting and a book signing, and I was so nervous. And I remember my friend who was helping me coordinate it all was calling me at my hotel room, and she was like, people are already showing up, and it's an hour before it starts. And she was like, some people came and bought books and said they can't come, but they just wanted a book, and they left. And I was like, are you kidding me? And she was like, yeah, so don't be late. And I was like, I won't.
Don't be late. So how was everyone finding out about it? Like social media, the radio?
Yeah. So social media, the radio, I've been featured in one of the big newspapers in Guyana. And I think word of mouth, like people were just saying like, yeah, are you guys going to Althea's launch thing? And then it just became this thing. And for that launch event, my childhood friend interviewed me. And it was just an amazing interview because people in the room were like, we see you all the time, but now it's so nice to hear these like backstories. And I told stories of like failure, things failing and stuff like that. And they're like, we had no idea. Everything's always so perfect on your like front end. Like when you shared it, I'm like, no, the first time I made bake, it was raw. So like all these things. And then I just like met everyone. Like everyone stayed back to just meet me and get a copy of the book signed. And I think at that point was when I realized like I really had a community.
Yeah.
And that I wasn't just this person that was, up here and there, down here. Like we were there together, because it took hours after the event was done for me to meet everyone and sign their book, and they tell me their story.
Yeah.
And so my poor husband was like, this is madness. Like, why are people still waiting around for that? So we had to start thinking about that. Even for like the New York event, I had to pause between like signing the books and just run down the line and hug everyone and say, I appreciate you standing on this line. I know it's going very slowly. Bear with me. I'll get to everyone, but please like sit down if you need to and come back to the line. Like I'll get to all of you. And people
just want testament to who you are is.
Yeah, people just wanted to give me hugs. I got so many hugs, but I'm a hugger. So I was just like, yeah. So yeah, it was great. It's been a great journey. Of course, there are hiccups along the way.
Yeah.
Of course, there are lots and lots of learnings and lots of, oh shit, I should have done that and I didn't. But hopefully the second book will be better.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're thinking about second book. but I want to also commend you too on sticking to your vision of releasing this in Guyana and being in your home with, family and friends, because I think that is something that, we look to the publishers or we look to different people to guide us and things, but innately we really kind of know what is best for certain things. Like you just knew that's where you wanted to be. And I think it was just setting you up for the success then that you has kind of been following you, I feel like. I've been seeing online, like you have some things coming up too. So things haven't slowed down too much for you.
They haven't. It's so funny. A lot of things are coming to me because people have seen me out and about doing these signings at, these cafes and working with chefs to bring to life some of these recipes. I'm one of the featured chefs at Antigua and Barbuda's Restaurant Week, which will be happening. It kicks off, I think, May 5th and goes through May 18th. And so I'll be in Antigua for the first time. I've never been to Antigua. Yeah. And, I remember in August, or maybe it was like in September, I'd set a post where like people keep referring to me as a chef, like everywhere I go. They're like, "Hey, Chef Althea," and I'm like, "No, it's just Althea." And because I feel like people who are chefs work so hard, they work in kitchens, they've earned it, and I felt the kind of way, like I don't know if it's imposter syndrome or modesty or what, but people calling me chef, and I did this post where I said, people always call me chef, and I always say no, and I'm saying it because I feel like it's not earned. And so many people are like, stop this, like you've earned it.
Yeah.
The different categories, like call yourself a home chef, a self-taught chef, whatever, but you've earned it. And then to have people reach out and say, we'd love to hire you to come be one of our featured chefs. Here are the chefs that you're going to be partnered with. And like the people I'm partnered with are like legit chefs, like their resume is like they've worked at all these restaurants, they create beautiful food, like, and then again feeling like, why me? Like how? But then realizing that what they really want is Caribbean Paleo.
Yeah.
Like they want me to bring the book. They want me to talk about all these remixes to traditional foods that make it accessible for people who can't have these things, and feeling like, yeah, I do belong and I am an expert in this, and I can create a menu from this and amp it up and have this experience. So I'll be teaching a class at a local restaurant and then having a meal, a family-style meal, 4-course family-style meal right after. And I'm like, this is so fantastic.
Like a dream. Yeah,
it's totally a dream. And I'm so excited that I didn't think that my blog would move off from this online space into this massive in-person thing that's happening for the blog, because a lot of bloggers are usually behind the scenes, right? You kind of create content at your own pace, you're at home, you respond to comments when you can, you like have this total online presence. But now to be like, no, I'm going to be traveling. I traveled the entire month of February and March. And then I was home.
Yeah. Their kids are like, wait a second.
Oh, my kids are like, my mom's famous.
Yeah, I guess that's the other side of it. It's like, oh, did you see mom on, TV or
yeah. Yeah. And I'm doing an interview on our local Fox News on Tuesday, where I'll be taking some dishes and talking about it, and also talking about like Caribbean Paleo. And they can't wait.
They're like, I'm sure.
You're going to be on TV? I have to tell everyone. And I'm like, yes.
So even like those local spots, is Andrea helping you get those? Are you kind of reaching out, or how is that kind of happening now? So, because I know that, the in-house department does a little bit, and then you hired Andrea, and then there's other things that are either by word of mouth or you interacting with people that are happening up from your efforts. But I'm just curious, like,
I had a 3-month commitment with Andrea just to kind of get the book and stuff going. That ended, but she's still like things that she has pushed out. If they're coming through, she's still sending them my way and kind of still connecting me wherever she can, which has been fabulous.
Yeah.
This particular TV interview is through the PR for the Antigua and Barbuda event.
Perfect.
So they've pitched me to a couple of things, and those things have converted as well. I was also featured in a publication that I'm totally blanking on, Traveler. I was also featured in Traveler because of this event that's coming up, right? I've also just have people reach out to me, like cold reach out to me. Hey, we've came across your post and we think you're doing great work and we'd love to feature you in XYZ thing. And so that's been great. And also Page Street's in-house PR, they have pitched me to a bunch of things, and some of them have converted. I did an interview with Colorado Public Radio where they came to my house and I cooked a meal for them, and we talked about Guyanese traditions and the book, and that was through Page Street. So I think there's just a lot of things that are happening where different people were pitching different things and somehow they're all intersecting. I am kind of in the space where I'm starting to think about whether or not I need more permanent PR, like whether I need to like just hire back Andrea and have her keep doing
Right. It's almost like a quarterly thing or something.
Yeah.
To set up a plan.
Yeah. Not just for the book, but also for me.
For you.
Now that I'm like out and about. And then also thinking about, do I need a manager and what does that look like? Because as a team of one, which most food bloggers are, it's just too much to keep track of all the emails, to constantly be updating posts, to show up on social media, to build that community, to have that conversation, to pitch ideas. I hate pitching.
Yeah.
Hate. So I'm starting to think about, like, beyond this book, should I invest in these other areas that are going to help me to grow and also to help me show up and be a little bit more professional, because you can miss a few emails, but you start missing emails constantly, then that weighs on my mental health and also it doesn't look professional.
Yeah. And they're going to find different avenues that they can explore too, that you wouldn't know, or even a publicist may not know, like having this, this managers that can go in and they can find different opportunities for you that, you don't have to do the work, but it keeps you top of mind in different places. And also just kind of keeps you out there in everyone's top of mind. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. And like everyone has their schedule.
Yeah.
And they have their things that they have coming down and they need to plug in. And I said to my husband the other day, I was like, I just want to make sure my name's mentioned in the rooms where they're getting the schedules together.
Yeah.
I don't even.
And you're an author now. It's like really standing into that author brand as well, too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so weird because, anytime any sort of forums or whatever, you'd always be like, and they'd be like, what's your occupation? And my title, blogger, right? And then now I'm like, do I put author?
Yeah, you're best-selling Amazon author. Heck yeah, that goes right on top. Well, Althea, I know we've been chatting for an hour now, so I want to respect your time, but I'm curious, do you have any just tips or thoughts for other authors who are just about ready to release their book or they're going to be publishing soon, just to kind of help them get out there a little bit more? I'm curious what you have to say.
I would say that my number one thing is be flexible, because you just don't know what you don't know. And even if you have a whole team of people working with you, there might be things that will fall through the cracks and that you have to pick up and you have to run with. So just be flexible with that. It'll help with your mental health. I wasn't as flexible and I was losing my money at the time. And I just feel like if I had just known that, okay, it'll be all right, it'll be okay, that I would have just relaxed a little and saved myself some energy. But the other thing is, people want to get to know you. People want to connect with the person who's written the book. They love the recipes. Hopefully you have a strong platform before you get into it. And they want to have some touch point with you. So whether you do virtual book events or you do them in person, I highly recommend them. They just make people feel like they're even more connected. And then if you can work with a bookstore that carries signed copies that they can ship within the US, that's even better, because so many people ask me over and over and over, how can I get a signed copy of your cookbook? And I'm not signing cookbooks and shipping them out from home. I don't have the bandwidth. But Omnivore Books, if you can even get in there, they will ship signed copies to anyone.
That's great to know.
So if you can get in there and do a signing with them and sign some extra copies, that's where I've been sending everyone that says, can I get a signed copy? I'm like, here's the link. And it's so easy. And they've all said, oh, that was so easy. And so those are my 3 things that I would say haven't gone through this. And at the other end of it, those are things that I wish that I had thought of way, way before in a game.
Great tips. So before we wrap up, I would love for you just to let everyone know where they can find you, where they can buy the book, and all the little details.
Yeah. So you can check out my blog anytime. All the recipes on there are free. It's metemg.com, METEMG2Es.com. And then you can get Caribbean Paleo, this beautiful cookbook, anywhere books are sold in the US. It's available on Amazon. It seems to always be on sale. So do that first.
And that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah. And then Barnes and Nobles, because if you have the Barnes and Noble card, that's 10% off. So you can get it there as well.
I have all the above from Barnes and Noble.
And then obviously you can get a signed copy from Omnivore Books, omnivorebooks.com. You can also get it from Book Hub and bookshop.com, which is all of the independent bookstores. So you can get it there as well. So many places, but you can also check out my fabulous cookbook page on .com that has all the links to all the places that sell the books. And you can also get a little preview of what the inside looks like and some of my favorite recipes, thanks to Liana. So if you want to check that out, please feel free to do that. And of course, you can find me on social media. My handle for social media is @metmg on almost all the platforms. I love Instagram, so I'm always on there. So check me out there first. But if you don't have Instagram, you have the other guys. I'm also there too.
Yeah. Well, definitely check all of Althea's places because I love following you. And I just wish you continued success in all that you do. But it's been a pleasure to have you. I appreciate you coming on. I know you're very busy. And I just look forward to seeing what's to come for the rest of the year.
Thank you so much, Liana. And for you too. I obviously adore you and the work that you do. And I hope we get another opportunity to do something else together.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Bye.
Bye.